Hello class. Today we're going to talk about comparing and ordering real numbers. So the first thing I'd like to go over is why are we talking about this? Well, the state of Texas gives the teachers a standard that we got to talk about. Today we're looking at 8-2D. Okay, so the first thing I want you to notice is that there's an 8 in front. That means that this is an 8th grade TEK. Okay, it's an 8th grade standard that we got to cover. So you will be tested on this in April. And what we're doing today is ordering a set of real numbers arising from mathematical and real-world context. Okay, so we've got to order real numbers. Well, last week we talked about number sets, and real numbers was one of those that we talked about. So let's review those real quick. Okay, so the number sets that we have, the very first one that we dealt with was something called counting numbers or natural numbers. And examples of these are 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. They're the numbers that we count with. Okay, then the next was whole numbers. Okay, now we added from natural or counting numbers, we added one number to make the set of whole numbers. We added the number 0. Okay, so 0 is our first whole number. Then we started with integers. Okay, we worked with those. So that gives us our counting numbers and 0. And now we have all the opposites of those. Okay, and opposites again meaning that they are the same distance away from 0, just on the other side of 0. So after integers, we have rational numbers, which we defined as any number that can be written as a fraction. That is a rational number. So this is our decimals, our fractions, our percents. All of those are rational numbers. Then the next one we had irrational numbers. And irrational, we define those as any number that cannot be written as a fraction. So we talk about these as being our non-repeating, non-terminating decimals. Okay, so one of the most famous irrational numbers that we have is pi. Okay, that's one of our big ones, and there's a multitude of others. But then the rational numbers and the irrational numbers, if we put those together, we have what we call the set of real numbers. And that's what we've got to deal with. And the definition of real numbers is any number that can be put on a number line. Any number that can be put on a number line. So when we start this, I give you a set of numbers. Okay. Just a hodgepodge collection of numbers. Negative 12, 3, negative 5.5, negative 8.07, negative 2 3/5, and negative 16 over 5. Okay? Now, what I'd like for you to do is put those numbers in order. Now, there is a question that should be popping into your brain right now, and that is, what order do you want, Mr. Nash? What is the main question you should ask when putting numbers in order? And that question should be, what order do you want? Because we have two orders. We have least to greatest, little to big, or greatest to least, big to little. Now, the other question, since we are doing 8th grade math, that should be popping into your brain, and that is, how do I use the calculator, or how can I use the calculator to help me put these numbers in order? Okay, well, when we come back and look at these numbers, we know that negative 12, 3, negative 5.5, negative 8.07, those are all real simple to deal with. No problem. But we do have a problem when we have fractions. Fractions are sometimes kind of tough, okay, to put in order. Because in order to do that, you've got to find common denominators and change the numerators and do all kinds of stuff. But because we have a calculator, I could take this fraction here and turn it into a decimal. And we know that fractions, it's just a division problem, top in, bottom out, top divided by bottom. So if we get our calculator up here, we've got 3/5. So what we're going to do is we're just going to type in 3 divided by 5 and hit enter, and it gives us 0.6. So that means the decimal value for negative 2 3/5 would be negative 2.6, because this part is what turned into the decimal. And then we do the same thing for negative 16/5. So we take 16, we divide it by 5. Now we know it's going to be negative, so we just put a negative in front of it. We end up with 3.2, so that would be negative 3.2. And now once we have everything in decimal form, because decimals are the easiest thing to put in order, we take our good friend, Mr. Number Line, and we can put them in order. Okay, so we start by putting negative 12 on our number line. Now whether you have to actually physically draw one out, or if you can do it in your head, then either way is fine, as long as you put them on a number line or think about them in terms of a number line. So the negative 12 would come down here. The 3 would be on the other side of 0. The negative 5.5 would be about halfway in between 0 and negative 12. The negative 8.07 would be just a little bit further on down the road there, negative 8.07. And then the negative 2 3/5 we know is negative 2.6. So that's going to be about halfway in between here. And then we got negative 3.2, which we know would be in between these two. So negative 3.2. Now if I asked you to put these in order from least to greatest, we would just write them left to right. Negative 12, negative 8.07, negative 5.5, negative 3.2, or negative 16 over 5, negative 2.6, and 3, because we know 0 is not part of it, but that's how we would write those. That would be least to greatest. Now, if I wanted it greatest to least, I would just write them right to left. Least to greatest is left to right. Greatest to least is right to left. Now, there are two words that we sometimes have to know in order to put things in order, is they will use these words on the STAR test or on other tests that I may give you. It says define the word ascending and descending. Okay, so ascending. Okay, we know that ascending is least to greatest. Okay, so ascending is always going to be little to big. Okay, descending means to descend, like if you're coming off a mountain, it's going to be greatest to least. Okay, so those are our ascending and descending. We need to understand those two words. Okay, so if we did that, here is a math problem that would require you to know that. Okay, so it says a golf tournament leaderboard posted scores of -16, 12, -8, 7, -4, and 0. What are these scores in ascending order? Now you might have heard that I call this -16 and -8 and -4. Minus and negative are synonyms of each other, and you can use them either way. So we want them in ascending order, and ascending order means least to greatest. Okay, so if we think about these numbers on a number line, we know all the negatives are going to go first. Okay, and the one with the greatest absolute value is actually going to be the smallest number. So that means -16 would go first, then -8, then -4. Right? And then we just reverse it. So we've got 0 now, and then 7, and then 12. So there's my numbers in ascending order. And that's what we're working on today. Just comparing and ordering real numbers. And integers are part of the set of real numbers. So let's see if we can do another one. Okay, here's one. It says, which of the following lists these towns in order from warmest to coldest? So if we're going warm to cold, we're looking for greatest to least. Greatest to least. So we look at these numbers and we see -17, -19, -6, and -8. Okay, so which one of these would have the smallest absolute value? Because the smallest absolute value would actually be the largest number, the number furthest to the right on a number line. So if we look at that, the -6 is the number that is farthest to the right on the number line. So Hill City is the one that we're looking for to be the first thing listed. So that means D and A are out. Okay, so now the next one, out of -17, -19, and -8, -8 is the next biggest. So we look down here and we find here's Hill City, here's Waterville. So the answer has to be C. And then if we go, there's Boondale and then Emberton. They're next in line. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, on this one we may have to use our calculator for. Okay, so take a moment, pause, read the question, and then see if you can answer it on your own. Okay, let's see how you did. On a math test, Jason answered 3/4 of the questions correctly. Paul answered 4/5 of the questions correctly. Susie answered 3/20 questions correctly. And Kate answered 7/10 correctly. List the students in order by name in descending order according to how many questions they answered correctly. So again, descending. Descending means I want greatest to least. Okay, now each one of those are fractions. Okay, and I'll be real honest, fractions are not my friends when it comes to putting things in order. Okay, so one of the easiest things to do then is get our calculator and change each one of them to a decimal. Okay, so let's do that. Here's my calculator. The first one is 3/4. So I do 3 divided by 4, and we end up with, and we hit enter. So we know 3/4 is 0.75. Okay, so that's like a 75. All right, so then we go to 4/5. So 4 divided by 5, that's 0.8. So 4/5 equals 0.8 or 0.80. So I'll go ahead and extend that on out. And then 13/20. So 13 divided by 20 gives us 0.65. So 13/20 0.65, and now we have 7/10. Now 7/10 you should know. 7 divided by 10, because when you say 7/10, it gives us 7/10. Okay, or 0.70. Now I'm looking for descending order, so that means I need the biggest one first. Okay, so the biggest one is 4/5, and 4/5 happens to be Paul. So I need an answer that's got Paul first. Well, there's only one answer that has Paul first, so we know that the answer is A. Okay. So let's look at one more before we look at some star type questions. Okay, let's skip this one. Let's go to one that's a little bit more fun, like this one right here. This one's a little bit better. It says, Ms. Long wrote the numbers shown below on the whiteboard. 4/5, square root of 9, negative 0.95, 2.9, and negative square root of 6. What is the fourth number when ordered from least to greatest? Okay, so this one we know that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, and I need to know the fourth number from little to big. So that means each one of those I need to convert to a decimal. Well, this one and this one are already good, so I need to convert the other. So 4/5, to convert that to a decimal, that's a division problem. So 4 divided by 5, and we just did that on the last problem, gives you 0.8. So 4/5 is 0.8. Now the square root of 9. Now to do your square root, we need to get to this key right here, that part of that key. So we do that by hitting the second key. So second, x squared, press the 9, press the right arrow to get out of the radical, and then hit enter, and you should get the value of 3. So this is equal to 3, or 3.0. Now we need to do the negative square root of 6. Okay, so again, we go second, x squared, 6. Okay, get out of that, and then hit enter. We end up with 2.4, and we'll call it 2.45. So negative, because it's negative 2.45, because we know it does keep going. But that's really as far as I need in order to determine which one's going to be first and so on. Now we're looking for least to greatest. So that means I need to find the littlest number. And the littlest number is this one. So, no, not 2.9, sorry. Okay, because that one's not negative. That is this one right here, negative 2.45. So there's the smallest. Okay, here's next. So that's 1, 2. So this one is number 1. This one's number 2. And then I got 4/5 is number 3. And then which one between 2.9 and 3? This one right here would be 4th. And this one would be our 5th. So we're looking for 2.9. So my answer is C. So you see how that calculator really can help you to put things in order. Now, what I'd like to do, I want to look at a star type question. Okay, how is STAR going to test us on this? Well, here is a question that was on the test a couple of years ago. And it says, there's two numbers are shown on the number line. Which value is not located between these two numbers on the number line? Okay, so keyword is right there. So I'm looking for which one of these numbers is not found in between that. Okay, now these are some really ugly looking numbers. Okay, but we have a calculator, we can type them in. So let's start with this number right here. Let's find out what these two numbers really are. So we've got the square root of 9 divided by 3. Okay, so we'll do, we just talked about the square root key. So second, x squared, 9. Now right now you'll notice I'm still under the radical, so I got to get out from underneath the radical. So now I hit divide by 3. We hit the answer, hit enter, and you get 1. So this is actually 1. So now we got to do 2 pi. Okay, so 2, and the pi button is actually right above this little exponent key. So we do second pi. You'll notice we got 2 pi there, and we hit enter, and that's equivalent to about 6.28. Okay, so 6.28. So what I'm doing is I want to know which one of these numbers is not in between those right there. Okay, so we just take our calculator and we start typing them in. Okay, so the first one that we had, let me move this over a little bit. First one we have is pi. So we take second pi, enter, we get 3.14. Is that in between there? Yes, it is. Okay, now we just did square root of 9 a couple times, but let's do it one more time just to be on the safe side here. So second square root 9, move it out of the radical, enter. We get that one's equal to 3. Is that in between but those two? Yes, it is. Okay, so now we got to do pi divided by 9. So second caret divided by 9, enter. We end up with 0.34. Is that in between those two? No, it's not. So there's our answer. But let's try one more. Let's go ahead and finish this out just to make sure we understand what we're doing. So this one is pi squared. So I'm going to do second pi, and then we'll hit that squared button. And then we'll hit divided by 9. We hit enter, and we end up with 1.09. Well, since this is 1, that's 1.09. It's just inside there. So that one, so C is the correct answer. So in this particular lesson, what we've been really focusing on is ordering real numbers. And we found out that we can use our calculator to really help us. And if we change everything to decimals, it makes it very easy to put things in order. Until next time.